Hey everyone, Dennis Chang here. Welcome to another video. Here I am in the west coast of Japan in a city called Fukuoka. 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 Not fuck you Oka, but Fukuoka. And today I want to talk to you about something, again, another philosophical video, but I think worth talking about. I've talked about this in previous videos before. There was one that I made about a year ago. It's a 2-hour-long video about kind of how I was learning Japanese and how I kind of learned music without practicing. So today's video is about how much you should practice. Is it even worth practicing? And how good should you get? How good do you want to be? These seem like strange questions to ask, but bear with me and hopefully you'll enjoy what I have to say. And if you like my content, please please subscribe. It's been a tough year, man. It's a lot of things just because of the pandemic. I mean, I'm not the only one, right? All of us, especially musicians, have been very negatively affected by the pandemic. And I never thought I'd move to Japan, but here I am. It's just the way things turned out. I'll talk about this in another video maybe. I promise I'll make a video where I talk about what's been going on since the pandemic. Basically, before the pandemic, everything was consistent. I had a lot of consistency in my life. Things were going in an upward direction. But then the pandemic happened and the governments of the world decided that for our own good, we shouldn't be working. And we just had to deal with it. And, well, I'm not going to complain. Well, I am complaining, aren't I? But instead of complaining, I decided to adapt to the new world. And I'm still trying to figure out this new world, how it works. So it would help a lot if you could like and subscribe. Man, this wind is pretty strong, isn't it? And if you could buy something on SoundSlice, on DC Music School, or you can buy some music on Bandcamp, you'll find all the links in the description box. Okay, let's get started. I think this video is quite important because a lot of us are trying to get good without really knowing why we're trying to get good. What's the purpose? And I think that's the key to getting good. And I talked about this in the past few weeks, in the videos that I've been releasing in the past few weeks. This thing that's happening here that's allowing you to progress, that's kind of hard to talk about. And I want to use my studies of Japanese as an example. Now it's been actually exactly 1 year and 1 week since I moved to Japan. First unofficially, then I officially got my residency status in August. But yeah, I moved a year and a week ago today. And before coming here, I had been studying Japanese for 3 years. But actually, I couldn't really speak so well, nor could I really listen so well. But in the past year, my level has exploded, like beyond belief. So what's the difference between how it was before I moved here and how it is now? Well, obviously there's the environment, and because I live here, there is a need to speak Japanese because the people here sure as heck don't speak English. Good luck. And it was a matter of survival. And I've talked about this in many of my previous videos. Whatever skills that I may have in life are a result of survival above all else. It was necessary for me to learn how to play guitar to a certain level, let's say. acceptable level so that I could work professionally with the musicians that I wanted to work with. So there was no choice. If I wanted to play with them, then I had to bring my level to that minimum standard. The same thing with Japanese. I'm nowhere near fluent, but since a year ago, I can confidently say that I speak daily Japanese. I can get around, I can sign up at the gym, I can go to the post office, I can go to the hospital. I haven't gone to the hospital yet, but I can do quite a lot of things on my own with just Japanese without Google Translate. A year ago, I couldn't read or write in Japanese, but now I can read quite a lot in all this without having really studied academically. It's all by environment. And then the next question you have to ask yourself is, what are your goals? How good do you want to be? Because you don't have to be like, Keith Jarrett, Birelli Legrand, or whatever. You can be just good enough. And good enough actually is not such a high level, to be honest. For example, again, using my Japanese studies as an example, I could actually stop studying Japanese now and do pretty well. Not ideal, but I can do pretty well. I speak a lot better than a lot of people who have been here for longer than I have. And especially if one day I chose not to live in Japan anymore and just be a tourist, then my Japanese level is perfect. It's like everything a tourist would need, I can deal with. Buying tickets, asking for direction. If something's not working, I can go ask for help. There's no problem. But because my goal is to live here and to integrate into society as much as possible, my goal is to get as good as possible. So I'm still studying every single day. I have lessons every single day, practicing all day, and I do notice my level increasing quite rapidly just because I'm here. To sum things up, 1 year of living in Japan but also studying and just being in this environment completely obliterates the 3 years of studies that I had online with private teachers. It's the combination of the teachers that I have and also the fact that I'm living here and using it for survival that's allowed me to progress significantly. So it's the same thing with music. If you don't have a reason to get good, like a kind of a survival, a dire need to get good, you will progress for sure, but you won't progress as fast as if you really had that need to get good. And that's exactly how it was for me with music as well. As soon as I got into Django Reinhardt, I managed to find some people to play with, and we had regular gigs. So there was a reason to want to get good. I had to learn songs. I had to learn how to play over those songs. I had to learn the melodies, and I played them every week for my bi-weekly gig for a number of years. And then I befriended all these players like Angelo DeBar, Birelli Legrand, Chalimberger, all the big names. Really, I don't even know how that happened. Well, I do know how that happened. It has more to do with social reasons than me being good. But anyway, I befriended these people, and I wanted to work with them. And obviously, if I want to work with them, then I need to have a certain level. So there's always a very specific goal. And me working with them is in the capacity of an accompanist. So I worked a lot on my rhythm playing, above all else. So this is something you have to ask yourself. Why are you practicing? Why are you trying to play jazz guitar, gypsy jazz guitar, whatever? It doesn't matter. Why are you doing it? Do you want to play with people? Or are you just playing for fun? You don't play with anyone. You just stay home and it's your own form of therapy. And that's a totally valid reason. But as I said in that 2-hour-long video, hopefully this video won't be as long, but in that case, you practice whatever you want to practice. Just make yourself happy. Don't worry about getting good. Just do whatever. Take lessons if you want. Don't take lessons. It doesn't matter. Whatever. Totally valid. And this is worth saying because in my 20s, music wasn't always very pleasant. Just because of the environment I was in. I was still in music school in the classical department, but still like hang out with jazz musicians. And there's kind of this pressure to have to be able to do all sorts of different things that at that time I wasn't necessarily interested in. Playing songs I wasn't necessarily interested in. And also at that time I was kind of, well, if I dare say, the only serious gypsy jazz player in town, the only one who was really taking it super seriously, wanting to get it to a high level. And in that environment that I was in, gypsy jazz wasn't, like the music of Django Reinhardt wasn't quite respected. And I can understand why. Because as much as I love gypsy jazz, it's also true there are a lot of people choosing to play gypsy jazz because they think it's easier. And in some sense, definitely is more accessible, easier to access for the ears. But the effort to get good is no different from, let's say, wanting to get good at bebop, for instance. It's the same process. You have to work really hard. So you have all these players not taking the music so seriously and not playing well. Don't want to judge anyone, right? But not playing exactly so well. So that leaves a sour taste to a lot of serious musicians. But I digress. It wasn't always the most pleasant thing for me, music. And it's only later on in life that I came to realize how important it was to reconnect with the reason why we want to play music in the first place. We play music because it's fun, we love it. And this is super, super, super important. Make sure you're having fun, or else, in my opinion, it can get rather painful, mentally painful, and that's something you want to avoid as much as possible. I think a lot of us musicians struggle with mental issues already. I think, as far as I'm concerned, I deal with it okay, but there are some tough times. So don't ever forget that. And then, when you have this goal of saying, okay, I want to get really, really good for whatever reason, there's this kind of toxic environment where we become so obsessed with trying to earn the respect of people who probably wouldn't even give a crap. Please don't demonetize me, YouTube. Who don't give a crap about your playing in the first place. And even if they do give a crap, the people like you're trying to impress are like represent a tiny, 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 tiny percentage of your potential audience anyway. So I don't know if it's even worth trying to earn the respect of such people who would be like looking at you with arms crossed. You missed a note on beat 2.5 of measure 36. Unacceptable. No. The truth is, there are very, very few people out there who can listen to music the way that, for example, I am able to listen to music, especially the styles of music that I am very familiar with. I've trained my ears to hear all sorts of extremely subtle nuances that most people don't hear, musicians and non-musicians alike. One of the reasons why I'm making this video is because just a few days ago a friend of mine sent me this message on Instagram. Let's check it out. So in this video, in this message, he's referring to an extremely famous guitar player, tons of followers. And this guitar player, of course, is very, very, very talented, very, very good. Man, I would even take lessons with this person for certain things. But in this video, this guitar player was trying to play swing music, swing rhythm. Now, it didn't sound bad. It's not like, ooh, it's horrible. But it definitely didn't sound like the real thing at all to my ears. And that person probably doesn't even realize it themselves. And if you look at the comments, no one else realized it. My friend sent me that video because he wanted my opinion. It's like, am I the only one to think that it doesn't sound right? And I told him, no, you're not the only one. I can hear it too. But you know what? Whatever. Most people can't even tell the difference anyway. It's kind of like an accent. If I were to speak to you in Quebecois French, Swiss French, or Parisian French, most people who've never been exposed to French probably couldn't tell the difference between the different accents, between the different the different accents. It was the same for me in Japan. Before I moved here, people were telling me about like all these different dialects. I was like, man, I can't hear a difference. And I remember I was watching this anime, and this Japanese friend went, that's typical like dialect from this place. I was like, what? It all sounds the same to me. But after living a year here and having gone to different parts of Japan, I'm starting to hear. Just yesterday, I was talking to someone who was. I'm here in Fukuoka, but I talked to someone who is not from Fukuoka, and he was using Kansai Ben. Kansai is central western part of Japan, and I heard it right away. Oh, you're from Kansai. You live in Kansai because you're speaking. He's like, yeah. I can tell now because I've trained my ears. I've immersed myself in this language so much that I'm starting to hear such subtleties. It was the same thing with Mandarin Chinese. When I first started speaking Mandarin Chinese some 10 years ago, you can tell me like Beijing accent, Taiwan accent, South accent, like West, like, it all sounded. But now I can hear these subtleties. So that's the same with jazz and gypsy jazz and swing. I hear a lot of these subtleties that very, very few people hear. And here's the thing. This person, this famous guitar player that plays this swing thing in a non-authentic way, personally, I don't mind. It doesn't sound terrible. I can't say that it sounds good, but it doesn't sound bad. It works. Like if I had to do a gig and that guitar player was playing that rhythm, it wouldn't be ideal, but it was like, I could accept it. It's kind of like English. Let's say I speak to you English like this. You understand everything I say, but you can't say that it's fluent, right? It's not native English. It's not like, not British English. It's not American English. It's not Canadian English. It's kind of weird East Asian English. It's okay. I can do it. I'm Asian. I have the right to do it. But you can't do it if you're not Asian. It'll be very racist. I'm gonna have you canceled. So that's how a lot of music sounds to me when I hear it not being quite right. Now, if someone were to speak English like that, it wouldn't bother me. Like, as long as we understand each other, it's all good. But in no way can we ever say that that's the total, that's the Texas accent. No way. That's when it's wrong. Ta-da. You guys hear that? It's a famous Ghibli song. Okay, what we're talking about. So the whole point I want to make is, I don't think you should obsess with trying to be like perfect in every single way. I think it's enough, as far as let's say gypsy jazz or jazz, just jazz guitar, it's enough to be able to play a song from beginning to end with the band and not screw up the tempo too much, not screw up the form. Well, not too much. Don't screw up the tempo, don't screw up the form. And that's not a very tall order. And I think that should be your priority if you're getting into jazz guitar and you have a goal of wanting to play with people. Practice to be able to play with people. So in order to practice to be able to play with people, well, you should watch some of my previous videos, but you need to go play with people and you need to practice on certain skills at home to be able to play with people. And just like my Japanese, I promise you it doesn't take long to reach that level, to be able to just play with people. I think if you work properly and you're in the right environment, within 1 year, maybe max 2 years, you will reach that level. I'm not going to repeat what I said in my previous video, so just make sure you watch the ones that I've been making in the past few weeks, or many of my past videos where I talk about this, about how to really practice efficiently. Because when I was younger, I did used to practice 10 hours a day, but it was such a waste, because in those 10 hours of practicing, I was doing all these stupid things that the internet and whatever guitar magazine at the time told me to practice, things like this, that got me nowhere. Or the permutation. How is this ever going to help me? It doesn't help me in any way. As I said in my videos, my real technique came from studying vocabulary. What else did I practice in those days? Scales, okay, autumn leaves, so C Dorian, F mixolydian, Ionic, Lydian, Locrian, Dorian or Aeolian or melodic minor. I practice that. Oh, arpeggios too, like playing autumn leaves like this. Tell me, which jazz musician sounds like that? No one, right? So you have to know how to practice. Now, practicing these things, I'm not saying was a complete waste, but practicing like these for like every day, many hours a day, that's a waste. It's definitely good to know your fingerboard to a certain extent, but nowhere you shouldn't practice this for like 2 hours, 3 hours a day. Even 1 hour a day is too much. You practice it just enough until you feel familiar with where the notes are in your fingerboard, but you need to start working on what you're going to use. So you gotta start working on songs, you gotta start working on vocabulary, things like that. So you need to be super efficient. And you'll realize that it'll be better to practice 1 hour or even 2 hours a day, but properly, than to practice 10 hours a day like I was doing when I was 15 years old. It was a total waste of time. Now, it's also true that if you practice 10 hours a day because you enjoy it, but you're also practicing efficiently, okay, then your level is going to explode, because that's exactly how it is with me for Japanese. I'm practically studying all day, every day. I have lessons every day with different teachers, and I would go out. I forced myself to go out to live houses or restaurants, and especially in Osaka, it was very easy to strike conversations with random people. Keep in mind, I'm an introvert. It's not easy for me to talk to people, but because I badly want to get good at Japanese, I forced myself to just let myself go and talk to people. And I've been practicing Japanese with so many random people, and this is great because this is real life Japanese. It's not like Japanese from a textbook that's all clean and everything. People will have different accents or speech patterns, speed rhythm. Like when you go to the convenience store, sometimes they'll ask you if you want a bag, but like in the textbook they show you like a very clean way of saying, do you need a bag? And I've only ever heard that once in my life, like almost like a textbook. And that was actually yesterday. I was so surprised, like, wow, are you like a textbook or something? What did you say? Reiji bukuro goryou desu ka? There are so many ways to ask, do you need a bag? Fukuro dou shimashou ka? Fukuro dou shimashou ka? Fukuro irimasu ka? Fukuro goryou desu ka? Reiji bukuro goryou desu ka? There are like so many ones. And often, because a lot of them are still wearing masks, they're required to wear masks in the stores, the employees, it covers the how do you say, it's not always clear what they say, and sometimes they mumble, but they'll be saying like, and in the beginning I was like, man, what are they saying? But now I've been exposed to it so much, and I've opened my ears so much that I know that they're asking, what is it, like, fukuro goryou desu ka? Which means, do you need a bag? Going to the convenience store practically every day and hearing all the different ways of saying, do you need a bag? This environment thing really matters a lot. This is pretty much all I wanted to say in this video. It's like, sometimes people ask me like, how many hours do I practice or whatever. Like, I don't count. It's more like, what do I need to do? like, okay, tonight I'm going to the jam session. They're likely, so this is something that happened, for example, many times. I'd go to a jam session, they would call a song that I didn't know. So I'm exposed to a new song, so I learn it. And I'm probably gonna forget it. But when I realize that it gets called every single week, I'm gonna go home, I'm gonna work on it, practice it, and then I'll know it for the next time. There needs to be a reason to want to get good, and that's how you get really, really good, really, really fast. Once you have like the more clear the goal, the easier it is to progress, in my opinion. And that's the secret behind a lot of child prodigies. They just know exactly what they want to do right away, and they practice for it. And then after, of course, they have talent as well, and they practice the right way. They say like you need to practice 10,000 hours to master something. That's not true at all. You can practice. There's some people, let's say someone's like 70 years old and started playing guitar when they were 5 years old. I haven't done the math, but I think they have probably practiced 10,000 hours in that lifetime, but many of them still don't play well. Because like I said, just like me, when I was practicing 10 hours a day when I was a kid, it didn't get me anywhere. Like those 10 hours I used to practice is probably worth maybe 20 minutes, 30 minutes of real practice, of efficient practice. So it's a total waste of time. And then as far as the subtle details of music are concerned, like getting X or Y to perfection, the kind of thing that most people can't hear, you work on that if there's a need to. For me, there was actually a need to do that because I had this goal of wanting to play with the top players in those styles. So I had to develop that kind of hearing. But like I said, if you don't have such a goal, of course, if you have the opportunity to play with Birel, Legren, everyone will want that. But realistically, is that really going to happen for most of us? It happened for me because I really did have that goal. Not to play with Birel, but like to play with high-level players. I trained myself to be able to play with high-level players because, I guess through luck, I befriended some really high-level players early on, and then my network grew from there, and I was able to play with just about everyone. But yeah, for me, there was a need to develop such skills. Otherwise, I think the standard isn't that high. The standard to play music half decently is not super high. Learn songs, ideally by heart, especially songs that you're going to play over and over again. So that requires a good environment. Be able to play them in time, in tune, and that's it. And just have something, like as far as improvisation goes, it doesn't have to be like the most amazing improvisation, but like just a few basic things, not enough not to get lost, enough not to get too confused when you're playing. That's good enough. This is very, very, very achievable within 1 year, and I would say 2 years tops. But again, you need those conditions first, all the conditions that I listed previously. I say this because I do meet a lot of people who I think are wasting their time practicing they're not getting any better. And that's fine. Like I said, it's totally valid just to practice for the sake of practice because it's therapeutic. That's always going to be a very good reason. But like if the other reason is to really seriously get good, they're wasting their time. Might as well not even practice. And the truth is, some of you have asked me, wow, Dennis, you've been progressing a lot since the pandemic. A lot of things happened in the pandemic, and because of that, actually I haven't practiced guitar in maybe 4 or 5. I haven't practiced music in maybe since before the pandemic, in 4 years. It's kind of sad. I'll talk about that another time. Yet, I'm still progressing. Why is that? Because I've trained my ears to be able to absorb things without having to practice. I mean, before I stopped practicing, I had already developed a pretty decent technique. But it's all because of the environment that I'm still, even though I don't practice, I'm still able to progress because I've trained myself to learn how to progress without having to practice. All the practicing is actually happening in here. And that's the key. This thing here that's very hard to talk about. I kind of reference in many of my previous videos. I think those of you who have the same ability, you totally understand what I mean. This thing that I said earlier about being able to progress without practicing, so with minimal practice, it's all about training your ears to listen very attentively, listen to music so much and listen very attentively and try to latch onto what you hear, so that when you grab your instrument, you can still hear it in your ear to a certain extent. It's kind of like a delayed transcribing. So, for example, here's a phrase, a very typical phrase that I came up with just now. Over A7. Where did I get this? I'm not exactly sure, but I've heard similar sounds elsewhere. And because my ears are always very attentive when I'm listening to music, I can just know it's this, over A7. So that kind of ear training is very, very important. That's why you gotta learn songs ideally by heart, and you gotta spend a lot of time to figure out music. So all these people who are obsessed with tablature and everything, they're not gonna get very far. The person who benefits most from the transcription are the ones who do the transcriptions themselves. So you really gotta spend time with music on your own and take the time to figure out. It doesn't have to be an entire solo, just even a melody. Instead of looking at the fake book, listen to recordings many times, and then just maybe even try to figure out the first phrase. It can be autumn leaves. Just figure out the very first phrase by ear if you don't know it. Learn the chords as well, so you know that it works over this. In the beginning, it's slow. It's true. And some people, it's true. Their ears are not as good as others, but I promise you, unless you're tone deaf, you can train your ears. I've talked about this in previous videos, but in the beginning my ears were quite bad, but I trained them. If you're really serious about getting good, you train your ears in that way. So what I mean by ear training, I'm not talking about getting an app and it tells you like, what interval is this? No, everything has to be done in context. So you want to figure out the music that you like, and you want to figure it out by ear as much as possible. Depending on your level, it could be a very slow process, but I promise you, it gets better and better. Learn songs. By learning songs, you expose yourself to the music that you want to play. You expose yourself to the chord progressions. You're hearing the chord progressions. I talk about this in all my previous videos. And eventually you will be able to hear a lot of things. And then grab your instrument and just do it. And this is what I'm talking about. Then at this point, you should still physically practice, but you'll be able to progress without even practicing. Well, there we go. There's this kid in Taiwan. He lives in New York now. He was my roommate. He's like 22 years old. He had been playing the vibraphone his entire life, so he had really good technique, classical vibraphone. But in a very short period of time, he learned to play jazz authentically, very quickly, because he had those ears. And when I lived with him, he almost didn't practice, but he listened to so much music. And because he already had pretty good technique, he could just transfer what he heard to the instrument. And there are these, I remember there are these people who are practicing way harder than him, but they never got good. They're still not good, even though they're studying for a master's in jazz performance, learning nothing. They will never get good, unfortunately. I don't think they ever will, because they haven't activated that listening thing. So that's super important. Okay, that's enough for today. Let me know what you think. I think I rambled a lot, but whatever. Thank you.